Hey ghouls and gals, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and today's video is going to be my most anticipated book releases for October 2021. I have 6 books that are coming out in October that I'm very excited to talk to you all about. As always, these dates are always subject to change, especially during this year, and there are also like additional supply shortages that are impacting the book industry, as well as just, you know, 2020 has impacted a lot of the books that are coming out in 2021, still coming out. So, you know, there still could be a little bit of change between this list and what ends up being the book's date. I don't believe so, but at the time I'm filming this video, it is the 25th of September. I'm pretty sure I have the right dates for all 6 of these books. I will be leaving information about all of the books in the description bar down below, as well as have information up on the screen with me while I am talking about the books. So let's just go ahead and talk about some delightfully spooky October releases. First up, coming out on October 5th, we have The Death of Jane Lawrence by Caitlin Starling. I've already pre-ordered this one. This is one of my most anticipated releases for the year. I've read, I believe, 2 other things by this author. Really enjoyed them both. This one is supposed to be a fantasy horror, and the cover is just it's so beautiful and so creepy and grosses me out and intrigues me at the same time, basically like a perfect horror cover. This is being compared to Crimson Peak, which is a movie that I do absolutely love, and this is about our protagonist Jane Shoringfield. She sees the world in numbers, patterns, and logical projections, and by her math, she needs one thing above all else: a husband who wants a marriage of convenience. At the top of her list is Augustine Lawrence, a young reclusive doctor. He agrees to her proposal with only one requirement: she must never visit Lindridge Hall, his ancestral crumbling house several miles out of town. He is compelled to return there each time the sun sets, despite night calls and ailing patients, but Jane must never accompany him. He says it's just because of disrepair, but on their wedding night, an accident brings her to his door past sundown, and she finds him changed. Gone is the bold, courageous surgeon, and in his place is a confused, fearful man. By morning, Augustine is himself again, but something is deeply wrong at Lindridge Hall. At night, strange figures stalk the halls, and Jane catches glimpses of a beautiful red-eyed woman in the mirrors and windows of the house. Soon, Jane is fighting for her sanity and her life, drawn into a world of secret societies, theoretical mathematics, impossible magic, and rituals gone wrong. And now that the secrets of Lindridge Hall have met her, they're not about to let her go. This also gives me very much Mexican Gothic vibes, and I absolutely loved Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia, so Crimson Peak, Mexican Gothic, I just think this is going to be absolutely like such a cool Gothic fantasy sort of paranormal horror piece. Very excited to read it. Next up, also coming out on the 5th, we have Reprieve by James Han Mattson, and this is described as a social horror. And it's centered around a brutal killing that takes place in a full-contact haunted escape room, exploring capitalism, hate politics, racial fetishism, and our obsession with fear as entertainment. So it's April 27th, 1997. 4 contestants make it to the final cell of the Quigley House, a full-contact haunted escape room in Lincoln, Nebraska, made famous for its monstrosities, booby traps, and ghoulishly costumed actors. If the group can endure these horrors without shouting the safe word reprieve, they'll win a substantial cash prize, a startling feat accomplished only by one other group in the house's long history. But before they can complete the challenge, a man breaks into the cell and kills one of the contestants. So we're following each single person who were there that night and lend their own points of views to the story. And as each character's journey unfurls and overlaps, deceit and misunderstandings fueled by obsession and prejudice are revealed, forcing all of them to reckon in the ways with which their beliefs and actions contributed to a horrifying catastrophe. This sounds so scary. I am so beyond fascinated with those like extreme haunted houses. I would never do one. I love horror. I love a bunch of spooky shit. Books, movies, TV shows. I do like haunted houses. There's one in particular particular I'm thinking of, that there's like one where like you sign up to really get like waterboarded and all of these things. That is my line in the sand. I am not like, I would never do something like that. Haunted houses, I think they're very fun. It has been in the back of my mind. I feel like there are a lot of books. There's even like some TV shows, like Psych even had an episode where this happened, where it's like the haunted house, there's actually like a murder or something like that happening there. And of course, there's so many people acting at being tortured, being murdered, whatever. You don't realize it until it's far too late. So that has always been like a not very realistic anxiety fear of mine. So this sounds absolutely horrific and very interesting. I'm intrigued to see, like, there are multiple points of view. It sounds like it's going to be kind of an unreliable narrator situation where you might not find out at the end of the novel, not necessarily who did it, but like what exactly truly happened. So I'm very intrigued to read that one. It sounds very unsettling. Perfect for October. Next up on my list, also coming out the 5th. Honestly, all of these but 2 come out the 5th, so very front heavy month for me at least. And that would be Paybacks, A Witch by Lana Harper, and this is The Witches of Thistlegrove #1. So this is like a fantasy romance. But I love a good witchy book, so I'm not normally one for especially contemporary romance, but the fantasy elements and the witch elements are pulling me into this one, especially because it is also sapphic, so I'm intrigued in those elements. I feel the amount that I enjoy this one will heavily depend on like which elements are leaned into in this narrative. As someone who doesn't read a lot of just contemporary romance, this is the chilling adventures of Sabrina meets the L Word in this fresh, sizzling rom-com. Emmy Harlow is a witch, but not a very powerful one, in part because she hasn't been home to the magical town of Thistlegrove in years. Her self-imposed exile has a lot to do with a complicated family history and a desire to forge her own way in the world, and only the very tiniest bit to do with Gareth Blackmore, heir to the most powerful magical family in town and casual breaker of hearts and destroyer of dreams. But when a spellcasting tournament that her family serves in approaches, it turns out the pull of tradition, or the truly impressive parental guilt trip that comes with it, is strong enough to bring Emmy back. She's determined to do her familial duty, spend time with her best friend, and then get back to her real life. On her first night home, Emmy runs into Talia Avramov, an all-around badass adept in the darker magical arts, who is fresh off a bad breakup with Gareth Blackmore. Talia had let herself be charmed, only to discover that Gareth was also seeing Lyndon, unbeknownst to either of them, and now she and Lyndon want revenge. Only one question stands: is Emmy in? So yeah, I don't know, this sounds fun. It's very like out of my comfort zone because it does sound very rom-com-y, even though it has witches. It sounds more like a contemporary romance, which nothing wrong with that, just not something I normally read. However, I do read a lot of horror, a lot of thrillers, like a lot of intentionally very dark things in the month of October, as well as all year round, but especially in October. So I feel like this one would be fun, would still have a spooky, almost sort of like Halloween Town, sort of spooky kitschy vibe that I could slip in between 2 of like very like unsettling and hardcore horror books, if that makes sense, like a little bit of a breather, fresh air, cute and fun rom-com in between. So I'm very intrigued and I'm looking forward to pick it up. Also, you can never have too many sapphic witches. Next up, coming out the 5th, we have Vespertine by Margaret Rodgerson. I believe, depending on what source you look at, this is either young adult or adult. I have seen, I believe that the author has said herself this is like her debut into adult fiction, so I'm not too sure if it's young adult, new adult, adult, what have you. This is the first in a duology fantasy series, and it's about a teen girl with mythic abilities who must defend her world against restless spirits of the dead. Artemisia is training to be a Grey Sister, a nun who cleanses the bodies of the deceased so that their souls can pass on. Otherwise, they will rise as spirits with a ravenous hunger for the living. She would rather deal with the dead than the living, who trade whispers about her scarred hands and troubled past. When her convent is attacked by possessed soldiers, Artemisia defends it by awakening an ancient spirit bound to a saint's relic. It is a revenant, a malevolent being that threatens to possess her the moment she drops her guard. Wielding its extraordinary power almost consumes her, but death has come to L'Oreal, Laurel. It's a location name, fantasy location name. And only a Vespertine, a priestess trained to wield a high relic, has any chance of stopping it. With all knowledge of Vespertine's loss to time, Artemisia turns to the last remaining expert for help, the Revenant itself. As she unravels a sinister mystery of saints, secrets, and dark magic, her bond with the Revenant grows, and when a hidden evil begins to surface, she discovers that facing this enemy might require her to betray everything she's been taught to believe if the Revenant doesn't betray her first. So this just sounds very, very intriguing, almost kind of a little bit of In the Ravenous Dark vibes. That was another fantasy that I read earlier on this year that dealt a lot with like death magic and the afterworld and like spirits and that sort of thing, kind of giving me similar vibes. I really loved this one. This just sounds like a fantasy that would be perfect for fall. I mean, we're already talking about the undead, revenants, spirits, all of that. So I'm very intrigued to give this author a shot. I have heard of her other works. I have just, you know, been kind of steering away from YA fantasy as of recent. So I've heard this one is a little bit mature in tone and themes than Sorcery of Thorns or the other one. I know she has like 2 very popular YA standalones, so I feel like this duology, it just sounds a little bit more up my alley than the other things this author has written, so I'm very intrigued to try this one out. I really do love a good spooky sort of fantasy. Next up, we have a book that comes out the 12th. That is going to be The Keeper of Night by Kylie Lee Baker. This is a historical fantasy book. I believe it's new adult or young adult. Again, not too sure, just kind of depends on what sort of sources you are looking at. But this is about a girl of 2 worlds accepted by none. Death is her destiny. Half British Reaper, half Japanese Shinigami, Ren Scarborough has been collecting souls in the London streets for centuries. Expected to obey the harsh hierarchy of the Reapers who despise her, Ren conceals her emotions and avoids her tormentors as best she can. When her failure to control her Shinigami abilities drives Ren out of London, she flees to Japan to seek the acceptance she's never gotten from her fellow Reapers. Accompanied by her younger brother, the only being on Earth to care for her, Ren enters the Japanese underworld to serve the goddess of death, only to learn that here too she must prove herself worthy. Determined to earn respect, Ren accepts an impossible task: find and eliminate 3 dangerous demons, and learns how far she'll go to claim her price at death's side. Again, another fantasy with very like horrific, darker elements, dealing with demons and souls, and I'm just very, very intrigued. I've been really loving a lot of historical fantasy lately, so I am looking forward to picking this one up. I believe this is also either a duology or a series, and I don't think it's been a while, if ever, since I've read like a historical fantasy with Japanese mythology elements, so I'm very intrigued with that as well. Love a good underworld story with like a quest. Very much looking forward to this one. And then last but not least, we have Nothing But Blackened Teeth by Cassandra Khaw. This comes out the 19th of October, and this is a horror fiction. It is a haunted house tale steeped in Japanese folklore and full of devastating twists. So I mentioned that I hadn't read a lot of Japanese fantasy very recently. I have read a lot of Japanese horror and tend to really, really enjoy what I've read. So the description for this doesn't have a lot going on, and it's very, very cryptic. So a Heian era mansion stands abandoned, its foundations resting on the bones of a bride and its walls packed with the remains of the girls sacrificed to keep her company. It's the perfect wedding venue for a group of thrill-seeking friends. But a night of food, drinks, and games quickly spirals into a nightmare, for lurking in the shadows is the ghost bride with a black smile and a hungry heart, and she gets lonely down there in the dirt. So this just sounds like a very classically creepy haunted house book. I absolutely love haunted house stories, or even just like abandoned location stories where a group of people go and, you know, there's this grisly past, they're unsuspecting, terrible things start happening. I love ghost stories like that, so I'm very, very intrigued for that one, as well as the cover. very horrific. Again, perfect for a horror book. I am very excited. I've been hearing lots of great things about this author. I haven't picked up anything by them yet, but I think, you know, this one might be it because it does look like a very perfect spooky season read. But there you have it. That is the end of this video. Those are some of my most anticipated releases for the month of October. Definitely let me know in the comments down below what books you're looking forward to reading in October, to picking up in October. If you liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel for more content from me. Stay safe, stay spooky, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye!